So to introduce myself, I oversee and have marketing responsibilities for Verizon Edgecast. For those of you who know a little bit about both brands, both of us are dedicated to performance and high quality online experiences for any type of content online, for web properties, for internet retail, for any type of video retail and over-the-top content experience. But rather than talk about ourselves here, we thought we would really look to the future and use the indicators of the millennials to help us do that. A couple of months ago, we wanted to have a sense of what online content, online interaction, brand interaction, and e-commerce was going to take, what was going to start looking like, what it looked like today, and what it was going to start looking like for the mainstream audience. To illuminate that experience and to really have an understanding of how to progress from a revenue and from a tone and from a sensibility perspective, we fielded a survey. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. To give you a little bit of the background on what the survey included, we fielded it in a couple of different ways. We talked to 1,000 people. 800 of them were the millennials. And the millennials, as we know, are really the group born from 1980 to 1998. There's not necessarily consensus on those exact dates, but those are the ones that we really chose to stick with. As contrast and as a control group, we also fielded a study to 200 non-millennials so that we could see contrasting. We could look at truth and fiction, we could look at myths and debunking myths, and then we could look at the millennials versus their counterparts in other demographics. We really wanted to do that so we could have a sense of how things were progressing today from a variety of different vantage points. What you can see is that we did very extensive surveying. The survey was almost 30 minutes from the online perspective. We also did in-home interviews, face-to-face interviews as well. So these are the results you're going to hear about today. I think what you'll see running through this presentation are a couple of themes. The importance of performance, the importance of device optimization and sensitivity, delivery speed, and e-commerce transaction speed, as well as the integration of many layers and different layers of content and video. A little bit about the millennials. Clearly, as their content consumption patterns change, we as suppliers, as brand holders, and as those interacting with that demographic as well as others really need to understand what moves and motivates them. And that's really where we started. But the bottom line to all of us is that they're the largest demographic today in the United States, and they account for almost $1.5 trillion of revenues. So this is an important, epic generation that we need to learn how to speak to and do so in a way that matches their expectations, matches their values, and in fact, aligns to their morals. So it's a multi-layered conversation that we all need to have. Now, here are some top-line results, and we found these interesting, and I'll actually point out where we found them surprising. But for millennials, it's both form and function that's important in their devices, in their interactive experiences, in their online content experiences. They have a brand loyalty of their own, and it's not always price sensitive. That was one of the chief surprises, is that being brand particular is as impactful and as motivating as price. So interesting. They really care about the recency of the information in the content. They care about quality, and speed is paramount to this group. They also require that their content follows them throughout the course of the day, and it needs to be device agnostic. So that puts a great burden on all of us. We, from the Verizon Edgecast perspective, as enablers of online content experiences, and those brands who are interacting or transacting with this group. They're also video vanguards. So even for those businesses that hadn't previously integrated multi-layered content and video, it needs to be considered and integrated. From a business impact perspective, we really consider this group the harbingers of the future, and it really speaks to a need for all of us to have a segmentation strategy and be able to micro-version our selling, our marketing, our transacting, our content, our video, and it has to be associated with the right tone, the right sensibility, and the right value set. The thing, though, to take notice of, we found, is that while there's great opportunity with this group, there's also heightened risk. Because they're so tech fluent, the abandonment can happen very quickly and very swiftly. The first thing we want to talk about was brand relationships, and we entitled this Loyalty and Love. Where do they have loyalty and love? As I mentioned, they really require both form and function in every interaction that they have. They're an active audience, they're not a captive audience. They know what they want, and they want brands that are aligned to their sensibilities, their values, and like I said, even their morals, which was something that was an interesting theme that came through, not just the survey, but the one-on-one conversations and dialogues that we have. This is obviously amplified by the fact that they're social. They make their preferences and their inclinations known. They make their disfavors well known. And the multiple screens that they use, often at the same time, usually at the same time. So there's lots of different ways in which they can be captured, but also lost. I mentioned this earlier. We found they don't base all their decisions on price. They actually make a great deal of brand preferences based on alignment to who they see themselves as. You'll see some of the top 10 brand favorites that we cited. These are very tech-forward brands. Now, in contrast, when we looked at the non-millennials, we saw legacy brands, like the top broadcast brands on the non-millennial top 10 list. None of them were on the millennial list. So you really have a chance to shake up this audience. There are also many instances in which legacy brands and incumbents have transformed or metamorphosed into appealing to this group in a really, really effective way. But the contrasts are here, and we're really in a tectonic shift in terms of this generation, this demographic, and how they need to be addressed in a very, very interesting and aligned way. Now, how are we all doing in this way? One of the things we looked at were the IR 500 websites to see how are they doing at device optimization? How are they doing at taking the content experience in a fluid way across the course of a day, across devices, and across the transaction and or the content experience? We found many who were not device optimized, who did not carry forward a great reactive conversation with their consumer, one of whom was actually an educational provider who targeted this demographic specifically. And so to have a substandard experience is really a chance for abandonment, loss, and brand erosion. It's really something that can tarnish, not just lose a transaction, but tarnish the value of the brand for the lifetime of that consumer. Alignment, optimization, performance, these are all things that are ways into the hearts and minds of this buying segment. We also looked at their online preferences, and I've sort of noted this at the beginning, gave you a heads up it would be a theme, but speed, quality, and performance is really something that just can't be underscored enough. These are the attributes they really look for, no matter if they're at a video retailer, if they want a TV everywhere experience, and if they're doing e-commerce or internet retail. These themes are pervasive. They want all their content, they want the immediacy and the recency, they want it to be up-to-the-minute content, but they require that the quality is optimal. And at Verizon Edgecast, we have solutions for the enablement of performance, speed, quality. That's why we fielded the study, because we want to know what the bleeding edge of quality and performance and content optimization looks like, and it's something that we wanted to share with you as a result of that. I've mentioned recency a couple of times. This is something that's really important, that there is a feeling of being up to date, of being up to the minute, of really being reactive to the world around the millennials and being able to participate and choreograph it with them. This is a couple of data points that are directly from the survey. Almost 50%, their top priority when asked was the immediacy of content. In the case of the survey, they talked about episodic television, a film, but this really is for all content. They also talked the next up in terms of priority scheme was a high quality content experience. So you have the immediacy and the recency, and then you have the quality of the content experience as well. Next up was a shortening of steps in a transaction closure and or of the experience that they want to have. So there's really an impatience effect, as I like to call it. There isn't a lot of tolerance for slow, arduous, clunky experiences. In fact, the abandonment is swift and it's steep. I wanted to do a little bit of compare and contrast, if you will. On the left side, you really see what the desired experience is. It's really a rich and personalized experience, multi-layered, many different types of content, video, interactivity. The notations that I'm citing have to do, in this case, with specific types of content, but it's rich media, it's ultra high def, It's device agnostic. It's where you can start on one device and pick it up on another. It really follows you throughout the course of the day. But with that comes the risks that I mentioned as well, and the red flags to all of us, and they're on the right-hand side. So this is where the tolerance is 0, and this is where drop-off and abandonment happens at the swiftest pace. When video or content is not presented correctly, when it is chunky or fragmented, when there's audio only, when there's freezing, when there's buffering, these are all the things that we're all working to prevent, and we specifically at Verizon or Edgecast are working to prevent. But left side, the gains and the desired outcomes, and then on the right side are the abandonment risks. This is a slide that won't surprise you at all. This really just talks about the effect of the device being an appendage to the millennial. And these are the devices they would miss the most. You can see laptops are at the top, things like movies in a movie theater at the bottom. This is really just a total shift in how content, information, and entertainment is absorbed, and it only underscores the responsive nature that the device has to play in all of us, but especially when targeting the millennial and that vast revenue pool they represent. In the study, we also looked at the different kinds of content preferences. So we've talked about the brand relationship, we've talked about the kinds of performance and interactive experience that are expected by different web properties, and now the different layers of content. We talk about the ambidextrous nature of the device and millennials' fluency across all devices. There's also this omnivore, this desire for multi-layered and textured types of content. Wanted to pull out a couple of pieces of data of interest. The top line, the 64%, really represents the new winners in the online world. And here we're talking about specifically video-related, video retail, and different forms of content and entertainment. You can see it totally eclipses any other type of thing. These are the Netflix and the Hulus and the Yahoos of the world, the Instagrams as well. What's very, very interesting is the bottom, which shows that non-millennials are 3 times as likely than their counterparts, the millennials, to have watched from an online source. So this is a real divide in different demographics, and why we really place an importance on being able to segment, being able to microversion, being able to experiment with your web property and your business and satisfy the different kinds of things that each demographic requires. This is heightened sensitivity, obviously, in the millennials to technology and devices, and the focus that we all must have on optimization. Again, I don't believe this is going to be surprising, but millennials have a specific bent and inclination to wanting to have freedom in their content. They don't want it to be tied to a specific place or time or tethered to a particular device. And so you can see the laptop and the smartphone far dwarf the counterparts when you look at the millennials versus the non-millennials. What's interesting is the number that is associated with the television set, second up from the bottom. And what you'll see is that when engaging in rich media, nearly 70% of millennials will watch it on their laptop, only 20% on a TV. So this is an entire shift in not just the content types, the brand relationship, but also the vehicles for reaching, whether it's promoting, whether it's advertising, whether it's creating experiences. This is really emblematic of the epic shift that we're seeing in the demographic. And this demographic will become pervasive as the mainstream, but for right now is a distinct and unique group of its own. The bottom line is that there are great dollars and brand relationships at risk and the lifetime value of that particular consumer. And, again, the reason that we care a great deal about this is we're dedicated to tentpole ideas of content quality, of speed and performance, and device optimization. We didn't talk about it here, but if any of you would like to learn more about what we do, certainly come find some of us from Verizon Edgecast. Also, we have the full study that's published, and if anybody would like to receive the full study, we're happy to provide that to you. Just see one of us and give us your card, and we will be happy to distribute that. So with that, I am closing this conversation 32 seconds in advance of my deadline. So thank you for your time today, and certainly come see any of us afterwards. Have a great show.